There's a play in New York called Sleep No More that is unlike almost any other in its long history of theatric performances. Unlike most plays, where people sit in a theater watching the play unfold, they are guided to a multi-room interactive set. They are given masks to hide their faces and are told not to talk or reveal their identity. But there is almost no supervision or enforcement of these rules. How the actors perform throughout this experience is interesting enough, but what is even more fascinating is how the audience themselves act. Reports of audience members hitting each other, interrupting the actors, throwing objects at the actors and other guests, and even isolated incidents of groping and sexual activity are frequent. Interviews with some of the audience members reveal that because of their anonymity, they feel empowered to act in ways that they would have never considered without the mask. It has been accepted within the social sciences that the greater the protections for individuals to express themselves, the more likely they will act in ways that are considered deviant or unordinary. Indeed, it is essential for democracy to protect the freedom of individuals to express themselves through nonviolent methods, but this can often lead to people exploiting that freedom. The main reason someone becomes anonymous in the first place is to prevent someone from harassing him or her at a later point. These principles are especially prevalent within the largest growing sector of entertainment: online video games. In this video, I would like to discuss how anonymity within online video games affects the way we behave and perceive others, and look at both the benefits and consequences of such an environment. With technological advancements, it is now easier and harder to become anonymous online. It is especially easy to stay in the shadows within the gaming community, where people hide behind usernames and fake aliases to protect the privacy of the player, and no one assumes malice for doing so. Fake names have been around for as long as the concept of an identity itself, but it has become standard in multiplayer games for people to use these monikers. But is such anonymity a great tool for interaction with other people? Anonymous gameplay offers a person a clean slate to make an impression on hundreds, if not thousands, of people worldwide. In the real world, people make predetermined judgments based on our rationalization process on how they look, how they talk, how they act. However, in an online game, there is nothing to base our expectations on, and so we assume neutrality at the first glance. A good number of gamers consider themselves introverts, and while this isn't true for the whole population of gamers, there is a significant portion whose primary interaction with other people is online. In some ways, online gaming can be a stepping stone for people who would normally avoid building relationships in the real world to do so. Gaming communities have been around since the dawn of the internet itself, with devoted fans of certain series or genres having the ability to congregate and discuss their relevant interests. Of course, it is important to realize that some of these people might not make that transition, and so they never learn the social skills necessary to be successful in the real world. A vast majority of gamers are American, and so it's no surprise that individual privacy is placed on a pedestal. However, it is interesting to note that the acceptance of anonymity in online gaming is not just an American ideal. Gamers around the world, even in some of the most repressive regimes, accept that hiding his or her true identity online is in the best interest of the game at large. Of course, this anonymity has consequences that deeply undermine the gaming experiences. For one, having an equal voice in an online game opens the opportunity to spread hateful, damaging, and disturbing messages to unsuspecting users. Because there is no way to easily identify the person behind the message, and because it's relatively hard to boot someone off a large online service, this forces players to deal with these individuals. The most common advice given is simply ignore them, and they'll go away, either on their own or from a moderator intervening. And that's usually the case in a chat setting. However, Whenever voice chat is an option, all bets are off, since it is harder for game clients to document or regulate it. The group that is most victimized and harassed in an online game setting is, unfortunately, women. The website fatuglyOrslutty.com is a great example of the abuse that comes with a zone of absolute free speech, and is where many of the images of this video come from. The initial response people have is that these are just 13-year-old boys who have conflicting feelings about puberty and their sexuality, but a significant portion of these people are actually grown men who live somewhat normal lives in the real world. These incidents not only hurt the player affected, but can ruin the reputation of gaming companies. There are accounts of women who have given up their subscription to major gaming services because of the hostile response to their online presence. Why do ordinary people resort to such lowbrow tactics? Research is somewhat sparse, but the best hypothesis out there is that these individuals are seeking attention, any attention, from those around them. Frequent online harassment is a sign of neglect or a lack of care in the real world on their part, so they use the online medium as their soapbox. In addition, many individuals assume that there are no consequences from their actions online, so they freely say whatever is on their mind, even if it is hateful and mean. We sometimes forget that behind each player is a real human being who has feelings and emotions and often plays games to distract themselves from the real world. There are obvious issues associated with anonymity, but gamers would rather deal with the harassment head-on rather than give up their online aliases. It is vital to remember that the vast majority of gamers are nice or at least understanding people. Games have become a social experience quite unlike anything we've ever seen, and many people have actually made real-life friends and bonds through this medium. This says something about not only the gaming community, but about humanity as a whole. We value each other's time and presence, and while we may most likely never meet certain people or players ever again, we simply seek to live our own lives in peace, and in the case of gaming, have fun.